We're here now, present, in this moment and every moment of all times, steady, inseparable from your self-perspective. You're consistently dancing between your focus and unfocus. Sometimes you're more focused. Sometimes you get so focused that you might feel that unfocusing is something that it's not easily accessible to you. In other words, that this wider perspective is something that requires a lot of work, and it's really something that is within you at all times. It is just a different perspective. This focus-unfocus dance, this question-answer dance, this self-one dance that you've been so brilliantly engaging in, eternally brilliantly engaging in, and you continue to engage in by looking for more and more variety to propel your expansion, to propel your new perspectives and new ways of seeing things, and therefore have a more satisfying discovery. Most of the things you experience is in that discovery, and therefore discovery of movement between your question and answer. We really wanted to start with this focus-unfocus part, as sometimes you're required, sometimes you feel like there is so much focus that you want to be unfocused a bit more, and sometimes you are looking really from that place of steady to apply it to so many different things that you're sometimes rushing into being focused. But that balance between the two is happening at all times. That which we call dance between question and answer, or between focus and unfocus, or between self and one, is consistently happening. In other words, your dance is between the perspective. It is not that you're in a question or in the answer, that you're just focused or unfocused, but your perspective is dancing between the two based off of, are you creating or receiving the creation? You can even say that your question is creating and that your answer is receiving the creation, and that your focus is creating and then your unfocus is on a line of receiving the creation. Therefore, you at all times having an opportunity to continue receiving even while focused. In other words, you can get to the place where you're so steady that you can apply that steadiness into everything you're giving your attention to, and therefore be more aware of the oscillation of the movement that's happening between question and answer dance. In other words, not only question, and then tipping point to answer, and then tipping point to question, but seeing the subtlety of the movement as it happens at all times. Every moment at all times you are reborn. Every moment at all times you're having new vantage point. Every moment at all times you're seeing things in a new way. And sometimes by giving attention to the question, and sometimes to the answer. Most of the time to everything else that it's in discovery between the two. And so we're really excited to hear what's on your mind today. Go ahead.
Hi, Weola. Your opening was just so perfect for what I wanted to ask about. I have so many questions, but and I was going to go with a different question first, but now I want to redirect this because this is really what was on my heart. And I know that a lot of humans that I know, they have fear that's based around what death looks like or what transition looks like. Okay, and for me, I don't have fear around that. I think I've gotten to a place where I understand that when I leave this physical body, I will just go back into a more pure positive state, and that's actually something to look forward to. That's not something to fear, right? And so I kind of feel like the idea of like one day we will make our transition, right? That's inevitable. I mean, that's guaranteed. That's going to happen. And I feel like that fact is actually something that drives us. If we are aware, we are driven into an urgency, not urgency like it's a problem, but like a feistiness, like a love for life, to get things done, to make accomplishments, to tell people that we love them right here, right now, because we all also understand that there will be a moment that happens that we're not going to be physically here. So I'm not quite sure what the question is. I think you'll be able to help me with that. But what feels best and most powerful is if we live, like if we were to live as though we had forever and there was just no end, we would lose touch with the power of today. And I'm feeling more and more lately the power of right now, right here, you know? So I guess I just wanted to kind of chew on that with you.
What you're looking for is to see the balance between the perspectives, that which is that forever perspective, wider perspective, and that which is self-perspective now in this physical body iteration perspective. Yes, you come in and out. In other words, you go from this iteration and there is a next one and the next one and the previous one and the next one and the next one and the previous one and so on. You're getting those newer vantage points and everything you say is in place. But what we want to bring to your attention is that sometimes based off of if you're so focused, you want to know that there is this eternity. You want to be aware of this eternity so you can relax. So you can relax so that achieving, that accomplishing, even that you going and telling everyone that you love them does not feel like an extra chore that you feel like it gets you to holding on to something so much so that you end up being more in a question. And then sometimes you're in a place of such wideness, such unfocused place that you're looking and rushing for the focus, saying, I have the urgency because this vantage point is so unique and I want to get all of the juices out of this particular vantage point and iteration that I'm in. And so you're consistently dancing between the two. There are people that can see that it's one and done kind of thing. In other words, one and done kind of thing can put pressure on it, can put pressure on you to be consistently into achieving this and 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 achieving this. In other words, to bring so much focus within you that you have so much resistance sometimes being built up. But also, if we take the other extreme of you knowing that you have infinite iterations, if you will, to come back and come back and come back, then none of that is flowing in that direction. In other words, you're so unfocused that oftentimes you even rather abruptly leave this physical iteration for the next one because you're looking for the newer vantage point. In other words, we consistently keep talking that it's not one better than another, that focus is not better than unfocused, that in your blended experience, you're looking for that balance. And so sometimes you will feel the urge from that place of unfocused, from that place of steady, to open the door for some trouble. In other words, looking for more and more and more and more and more and more focus to look for, where you're going to feel it's one and done. You have only one life to live. And that is true. From this vantage point, that is true. You have that play from this place of this self that you're perceiving through all of your physical senses. It's a one and done thing. And therefore, sometimes it is good for you to go and have that perspective. And then sometimes when you feel like there is so much going on, you can really relax. You can really chill out knowing that there is so much more and so many other vantage points that you've been part of, that you will be part of, that you can really ease up from that achievement moment at that time. In other words, that's where you're consistently dancing in. And the balance between the two will actually bring you, oftentimes we sense that in a word of steadiness or balance, it might feel to some that there is not speed. But when we say incremental, gradual, consistent, steady movement, what we mean is you are so steady that you can choose the speed. And as you can choose the speed, then you really feel like all the reins are in your hands. And therefore, you're choosing those perspectives so much so because not one is better than another, but the balance between the two. But you finding the balance between the two so you can move from each and one to another, from each to another, from each to another, with as much ease and as much speed as you please. Sometimes being so aware of the eternal part of you that you have little interest to what's happening around you. Usually not that often because you're usually rushing from that place of steady. Once you equip yourself with getting to that steady easily, you rush to go into seeing how you can apply that into the next and into the next, into the next focused thing, and therefore really enhance, and that for really milk through, and that for really get so much out of this present place of self that you really feel like there is nothing more satisfying to experience.
Yeah, that's really good. That hit right where I need it hit. And another question that I have is it's about vulnerability, and I want to chat about vulnerability. And I feel like change in our life, changes are the most inevitable thing that's going to happen. That's like the one thing that's guaranteed, is that everything's going to change at some point. We don't stay the same at all times. We are constantly moving, and we are constantly changing. And for a lot of people, it's really hard to accept the change because we like our comfort zone. We like what we know. We like what we are used to. And that feeling of kind of being stretched out beyond the boundaries of our comfort zone is something that makes us feel vulnerable, because we're new at this new thing, and we're not even sure how to navigate it, right? So we have to kind of like find our footing. So I guess my question is it, I don't know what my question is. I guess I already know what I know, which is there's courage in finding your footing in something new and allowing yourself the strength to navigate forward and go through it. And I feel like that's where most of our growth and self-improvement will actually take place. And I guess I kind of want to know if I'm right about that, or is there something more for me to know around this whole idea of that foreign sort of vulnerability, courage to seek change and go forward? I think that's just, yeah.
There is few angles you can observe vulnerability from. It is you get to the place of steady, and then every time you ask the question, you're vulnerable. Every time you're really perceiving something different. But if you are the one opening the door for the vulnerability to happen, it does not feel bad to you. It does not feel like you need the courage, because you know you have tools to get back to steady, to get back to steady, to get back to steady. So your vulnerability becomes curiosity. Your vulnerability becomes excitement. Your vulnerability becomes something new that you're going to explore and explore and explore. We understand that place of vulnerability is when you have so many question dances happening. In other words, you're so steady, you're so consistent in your questions that you feel vulnerable that any movement will get you there, because what you're seeing is that you'll learn how to handle those question ping pongs at some point, and you might feel that is your natural state, and then moving into the place of steady, and then sometimes being struck again by the new question, because that is the most dominant thing. We understand that that's the vantage point where it feels like the change is out of the comfort zone, but the change is the most natural experience that you have. You came for change. You came to experience from this unique place of self change, because change and movement is happening at all times. And then if you're having the flashlight on the question too much, well, that can feel in that way vulnerable, where you feel like not much movement is better thing. In other words, you are learning how to cope with something, and therefore you feel that. And we understand that it takes time on that part of creation process for you to see the tools to get you to feel fuller, So that process of discovery of steady becomes the first part, very important, crucial part for you to see that there are other things, for you to see that there is movement. But once you see that there is movement, once you see that everything is consistently moving, and that you've been keeping the flashlight of attention for some time in that one spot, well, now you can put the flashlight in a place of steady. your flashlight of attention in a place of question, your flashlight of attention in a place of answer, in a variety of emotions that are telling you, those variety of emotions telling you that there is movement. Your emotional system that you have, some call it guidance system, feeling system, you can call it whichever way you want. All of those are really showing you the movement. Showing you the movement that you're never really in one place. That there is no such a thing as a comfort zone because you're consistently moving. It can be only what you have recognized that can be the comfort zone. But the comfort zone on its own does not really exist. There is no comfort zone because the comfort zone that you're talking about is really the movement happening at all times. And so there's only known things, things that you deliberately go to, or things that you allow yourself to experience based off of your experience of how steady you can get or how often you can use the tools that you have to get you to that place of steady. But the moment you see that there is this tool that got you to the place of steady, and then another time it got you, and then a different tool shows up, and then a different tool shows up, you see that even the tools are consistently changing. They're so changing, so much so, that then you see that it changes, as you really nicely said, the only inevitable experience that you have, and therefore the most natural thing for you. Your change is your comfort zone. And so once you see that, then you see that vulnerability is only when you're so exaggerated in the place of question and not so confident about getting to the place of steady. But once you understand that the steady, if you got to steady even once on your own, if you got to steady even once by using any kind of condition, you can repeat that, and in experiencing of that movement, you will get so steady that at some point you will start applying it. You will not be surprised by the new questions coming through, but you will be the one inviting them. You will be inviting them so joyfully, so ecstatically, that you will be looking to spend more time in curiosity than in vulnerability.
Oh my goodness, that's so good. It's like just changing, just in my mind, when I change the word vulnerability to curiosity, everything shifts. Like it all just shifted. It makes sense that it's just staying curious. And okay, last question. Vulnerability
is reactive. Curiosity is proactive. Vulnerability is reactive. Curiosity is proactive. Vulnerability gets you from clarity of question. Vulnerability gets you to ask the question. Vulnerability gets you to that place of asking the question and then to start moving, because vulnerability is already some movement that gets you to the place of steady. But when you're in a place of steady, you can be surprised by question and vulnerable again to get to place of steady, or you can be the one opening the door and not skip this beautiful other part of creation, which is your curiosity that leads you into intricate parts of observing variety and making preferences and therefore asking questions. In other words, all of that can also be directed by you.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Oh, okay, last question for now. I realize that as I ask this question, it probably comes from a little bit of a wobbly state, but it's basically just a reflection of other people.
We love to hear those questions that come from vulnerability. All of the questions come from that space. And so do not feel like you need to justify that you were in a wobble or ask the question, because that is equally valuable part as you discovering the answer.
You're right. You're so right. I mean, absolutely. You're right. You're absolutely right. So I'm recalibrating right now for that. The question is, we come in as our physical beings, and we are pure positive energies. We know that joy, growth, and expansion is our intention as we are here. Why do we forget? Why do we go through that process of forgetting, and now we're coming back?
You never really forget. You never really forget. You never really forget. You never really forget. We said it several times. You never really forget. What happens is that you choose to stretch the limits of your focus from this place of self. You're choosing to see what more is there, and sometimes you're rushing so... In other words, you were non-focused, and as you were a little child, you're mostly unfocused. You sleep a lot, which means you're a lot unfocused, and then you're building your muscle of focus. And you're here, and that gets so exciting to you. If you watch little kids, you will see that they are really so excited and so focused. They rush their focus so much so that at some point they just crash before they go to sleep. But you will also see it. Kosta and Arman had this wonderful dinner time at a beautiful rooftop here in Asheville with friends, and there was a lovely little kid who came in to play, and he was playing with Kosta and with this other lady and with Arman and with a variety of people, playing and playing and playing, and then at some point he was getting a little tired, but he did not want to be unfocused. In other words, the focused is the most exciting part that you have. In other words, he wanted to forget what was unfocused. He wanted to forget what is the wider perspective, because the narrow perspective was so stimulating, so exciting. There was so much more going on. In other words, that is that part. That is that addicting part that keeps you getting back into more, in this and every other physical iteration. In other words, there is nothing that you really forgot, because by saying you forget means that you would be disconnected from something that you cannot be disconnected. You're just so excited about this focused part that you lose a little bit of balance because you're so excited. Your excitement about focus gets you for you to sometimes feel like it appears that you forgot your wider perspective. And that's all that happens. You get into stretching of your focus. And sometimes you are stretching it and go back, and you're stretching it and you're unfocused, and you're stretching it and unfocused. But there are some that get so excited, so thrilled by the focus, so much so that they're only there predominantly asking those questions. But they really also do not stay there too far, because every day they get to find the resonance with everything that exists. Again, either by sleeping or by relaxing or by meditating or by appreciating or by dancing or by any physical activity that allows their thoughts to be softer and softer and softer. And then they get back into rushing, to ask questions, to play question ping pong. In other words, there is really no forgetting happening here, because to forget your wider perspective would mean that you can be detached from it, which is can never be true. For eternity operates in a perpetual, consistent, blended, integrated, steady way.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how to say I love you big enough. I love you. That's perfect. And I thank you. Thank you.
Really, really excellent start to this broadcast. Go ahead. We're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, hi. So my question, first off, thank you for having me and for putting this on. But my question is, how do I step into, my life? Because I feel that I'm, capable of, doing more than what I already do, like with work and love life and things like that. But I feel that I'm kind of closed off energetically, to have more things and allow more abundance in my life. And I feel that part of it is because I'm not allowing myself to quote unquote step into my life.
Everything that you're experiencing at all times is this divine part of you, God part of you, everything that exists part of you, source part of you, universe part of you, whichever way you want to call this wider perspective, looking for more expressions. We recently started using this life force. You're a life force coming through looking for expression. And this expression comes through all of your relationships and through your work and through your physical body and through your physical mind, shows itself through your physical emotions and through the energies that you're experiencing. But you are not any of those identities, any of the identities of you at work or you in a relationship or you in the place of giving attention to anything or anyone else for longer periods of time. So once you understand that which you call stepping in your life, it's really what you're looking for is to, how am I so resonant within my own life force so that I allow for that to find more expression, in abundance of relationships and success and health and any leisure that I have going on is by understanding that really you are not any of that for longer periods of time. You are not any of the identities that you have. You have so many identities that are switching throughout the day. In other words, you wake up and then first you're a sleeper. You're still a sleeper. You're still a cuddler. You're still someone who is having so much. You're someone who is cuddling even with your blanket and with your pillow. In other words, and then you move on, and then you're someone who is taking a shower, and then you're someone who is brushing the teeth, and then you're someone who is cooking the dinner, so you're a cook, and then you're someone who is having a conversation with a friend, and then you're someone who is meditating, so you're a meditator, and then you're someone who appreciates, you're an appreciator. In other words, then you're someone who is working, so you're a worker, then you're someone who is a friend when you talk to the person, then you're someone who is a spouse, or you're someone who is a partner, then you're a parent, then you're an aunt, then you're a grandmother. In other words, all of those roles continuously switching from one to another, from one to another, from one to another. And once you realize that there is that movement happening at all times, you stop trying to hold on to one of them to be an abundant person. In other words, now I'm someone receiving abundance, and I want to hold on to it because this abundance is the most important thing. Or I want to now hold on to this relationship because me being a spouse or me being a partner is the most important thing. In other words, sometimes you try to make so much about this one identity and hold on to that one identity like it's the only identity you ever have, understanding that that does not even happen. There is no a day when you're only one identity. There is no a day when you're only one emotion. There is no identity that you're the same body. There is no identity that you're the same intellectual mind over and over again. In other words, that's consistently moving and dancing. And so once you understand that there is that life force looking for expression through everything that you have going on, then you understand that there is really nothing to step into but for you to allow it to find the expression. And there is a big, big difference in that.
Okay.
We love that. Swift, brief, to the point of understanding. Excellent, excellent conversation.
Thank you.
Go ahead. We're ready for more.
Hello. So, I had a question that actually was prompted a little bit by Lindsay's last question. Hello, Lindsay. So before we become into physical, we're non-physical and we're infinite intelligence, right? And we're excited to come into the physical and play with the contrast and sift and sort and choose. And when we're here, I was going to use the word forget, that we are infinite. We can at times forget that we're an infinite intelligence and that we have the power that creates worlds, and we create our own reality. And many people either at times are not plugged into that consciously, or some people live most of their lives seemingly disconnected from that. But if we're infinite intelligence, we know that that's going to happen when we come, yet we're still excited to come. So I'm unclear on how that works, because if we're coming to have fun, we get to do whatever we want, choose whatever we want, yet much of our lives often are lived without that awareness and in pain, or discomfort, if not full pain. So if you could help me kind of understand that a little bit better, that would be great.
First, if you were to know that you can ever be disconnected, you would never come through. But because you're never disconnected, you come through. In other words, you know so much so that you're so consistently connected, blended, integrated from that place of non-physicality that you call into physicality, that you're eager to come through. But the definition of fun that you're looking for, we understand oftentimes the fun is only in a place of that positive emotion, and not only in positive emotion, but positive emotion at all times. And so when you get to the place to expect that the fun is only in a positive emotion at all times, then you hold on to that positive emotion at all times, and then you don't have it at all times. In other words, you get to the place sometimes to really not see as clearly that the fun is really in discovery, that the fun is really in building the tools for you to get an experience that's steady from this unique place. Because of that discovery and movement is so much satisfying that, in other words, you're never getting to the place of easy, of love, of satisfaction, of compassion, of bliss, of enthusiasm, and all of those positive, beautiful emotions. You never experience it the same way. In other words, there is no this finite amount of feeling of ease and satisfaction in a place of unfocus that then you are consistently checking in with. In other words, that there is this finite amount, consistent and finite amount of ease and love and appreciation, and now you're just stepping in and out from them. Every time you get to experience the question, the answer brings new layers and new layers and new layers and new layers of that. And so if you were to feel like you're in that place of satisfaction and ease from that place of non-physical, and that is consistent, finite thing, and that is the most satisfying place you can be, you would never come through. But you know that that's not the case, that from the place of blendedness, you can experience the movement and discovery in a way that you cannot when you're not non-physical. In other words, that's why you keep rushing. We want to also bring to your attention, we have not really spoken about this before, how long do you think you stay in a place of non-physicality? How long do you stay in that place of so much so awareness of unfocus that you feel like how long is even if you could measure it, we know you can, but even if you could, how long is that time? Are you talking days? Are you talking minutes? Are you talking years? Are you talking decades? Are you talking hundreds of years? Well, it depends for a variety of people, but most of the time it's a very swift thing. It's a very swift thing of switching the perspective. You do not stick around in this non-physical place for too long of a time because the party is here. The party of experiencing that which is here because through your questions, you get to experience reconfigured everything that exists, or what you call universe, or what you call source, or what you call God. Completely reconfigured. And therefore you want to be on this place of blendedness and steadiness and integration and gradual, incremental, consistent change that's happening at all times. Because you want to experience all of that. You do not want to just experience non-physicality and unfocus. You want to experience how that unfocused new layer and a new layer and a new layer of love, really if we sum it up, it is love, how that can be applied to every step of the way of your discovery to bringing to the new place of sometimes discomfort and vulnerability to generate the question, and then to move you back into the place of more steadiness so you can experience new layers of love, new layers of bliss, new layers of satisfaction. If there was a finite thing of satisfaction and ease that you already have access to, you would never rush into this. But you understand that you do not want to be on the sidelines. We are saying it maybe for the first time this way. You are in a place that it's not in the sidelines. You are in a place of action. You want to be in a place of action and activity. And the only time where you might feel you forget the other part, and that holding the space of unfocused or that non-physical is the grand prize, is when you feel like you cannot get there on your own merit and on your own way as often as you want to. But once you understand that even if you once throughout the day experience ease, which everyone does, every focusing mechanism experiences ease multiple times throughout the day, not really maybe predominantly enough for that takes the experience of that consistent fun of giving attention to everything that exists, and therefore that being a wonderful experience. But everyone experiences it. So once you start recognizing those what appears to be first seldom moments of ease and bliss and satisfaction, then you start looking into how did they show up, and then you get curious how to replicate it. And once you start replicating it with one tool, with another tool, with a third tool, you understand there is infinite ways to get to it, and then you start seeing not only to get to it, to that place that you once felt was love, or other people are feeling like it's love, but it's consistently new and consistently new and consistently new. So what you see sometimes in others, from their place of steady, they're consistently feeling new and new and new and new layers of that which you call love. And so that's why you're so eager to come through, because there is no separation. There is no separation, so much so that you know it so well, and you know where the party is, and you want to be in on that party. Everything, every step of your discovery, both from the place of steady into that which you might call contrast, and from that place of contrast which you call steady, all of it being beautiful, wonderful discovery, where you want to apply your God experience, your God part of you, into all of those experiences, because only then you can feel the fullness of what's going on. Eternal, perpetual movement of infinite new layers of love available for you to experience.
That sounds great, and when you talk about the party, I'm excited about the party, and but there are it seems like, there have been times in my life, for long stretches of time, that I just was like a kid in a candy store looking at it and having no idea how to get it. The party, the fun, it's seemingly not remembering that the joy's in the journey, that it's all here, that the fun is in the solving, the fun is in the flowing and the allowing. And I'm thinking about someone in particular who's lived many, many years in it, seemingly with just such a small percentage of their existence has ease in it. And it's hard.
It is hard to measure that. It is hard for you to measure what somebody else's small amount of satisfaction and ease and steadiness compares to yours of what you found. We understand it's hard for you to see it because you're trying to see it from a place of self. You will never be able to experience other self vantage point. You can only experience it from a wider perspective, seeing that which feels like a little to no movement to you, like little to no love to you, might be really the most this person has ever experienced across a variety of iterations. And so when you stop trying to look from that place of self, when you're trying to do really an impossible thing, which is to experience something from the place of self, but pull it from that wider perspective, then you see that movement has the value. Then you see that which you observe as struggle has the value. And that is the moment when you stop seeing as much that as a struggle, but their own movement and dance. And that is really when you start holding the space for them to see more of that in that light too. In other words, for you not to see them with that place of steady. In other words, you found your steady. You said over longer stretches of time, you were a kid in a candy land, wanting something but not knowing how to get there. That was your clarity of your desire, clarity of your desire, clarity of your desire. And then you found a way through your ways how to find the tools to get to that. And now you're in the candy store eating this candy. And you're eating it, and you're eating it, and sometimes you have a stretch when you're looking for more candy, and sometimes you're eating the candy. And we're saying you do not have to have stretches of time this way and that way. You can have that continuously easy with the balance. And we understand you found more of that balance than ever before, and you will continue to look for more, and you'll continue to experience more and more and more. And then occasionally, you look back at someone who is now that kid in a candy store. In other words, now they're consistently, maybe even predominantly, just looking at those things without eating the candy, without stepping into that store. And from the place of self, you might be reminded of that, but from the place of wider perspective, you will never be reminded of that. And so, if you look at them from the place of the candy store, meaning you being in that candy store, and saying, look, I'm here. And you can be here, and I'm not going to force you to be in there. We're not saying you have this conversation, but you have this conversation in your mind. I'm here, I've been predominantly where you're at, and I know that I found certain tools. And I do not know if my tools would work for you. That's why I wouldn't even offer to them unless you ask me for my tools. I will be in this place of study. I will be talking to you. I will be waving at you. I will be having conversation with you from my place of being in a candy store. Not wishing for the candy, but you wishing for the candy and me being in a candy store, inviting you consistently to join. And then at some point knowing that if I'm so steady in a candy store, not coming out to talk to you from the place of wanting to have fun, wanting to be in that candy store, but being in the candy store, there is better chance for you to occasionally join me. And then if you join me, when you join me, because you will join me at all times, not at all times, but you will join me enough times while me holding my steady place in being in a candy land, in candy store, you will then eventually see that it's possible for you to get there on your own too. I might sometimes be that motivation for you, and you will come through, and then you will come through, and then you will find your own way, your own resonance. You will recognize the system on your own, and you will get there. This is what really true empowerment means. This is how far you can get in really holding the steady place of being in a candy store versus joining someone outside in a place of desire.
I get that, and I don't want to use up too much time, but I what I don't grasp is that there are people who seemingly spend 99% of their existence looking inside into the candy store, and yet we're still excited to be here. We know that is, since we're infinite intelligence, we know that perhaps this round of being physical, we're going to be outside looking in for most of that existence, but yet we're still excited to come. That's what I'm still...
In other words, you're saying some find more resonance and balance and some do not find as balance. And why would they make decision to come through? Why would they make decision to come through and do all of this suffering and misery? And you do not know if this is misery and suffering, how much is it? In other words, you can see it from the place of self. When you pull up and do it from the place of candy store, it's not suffering and misery. In other words, it's movement and it's movement and it's movement. It is consistently movement. You cannot judge from your place of self where is someone in their own discovery. In other words, you can see that when you see that from the wider perspective, you see it as some movement, and you do not judge how much movement they have compared to you or for the others that you're seeing. You do not judge even yourself how much movement you have compared to someone else, because it's that place from that individual point of self is an individual experience of that question, answer, dance that you're consistently looking for. And therefore, this iteration might feel like that, the next iteration might feel like different. And some, quite honestly, get to the place of having that, which is 99.9% of question, ping pong, and sometimes make that what we call spiking experience, or many refer to as a quantum leap, and switch immediately into this resonance of nature. In other words, there is infinite ways for you how to get to the balance. Some do get, some never get in this iteration. That's why they move on to the other one. But when they do get, they get in their own very unique way. And so you holding your steady to allow them to see variety and make their preference is the best standing point you can be in.
That's very true. That's very satisfying. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Really, really excellent conversations today. Go ahead.
Hi, Weola. I would like to ask today about how you talk about how when we find our steady, we then can go and choose the questions, and how when we do it that way, we don't get knocked off, or it's not quite such a uncomfortable experience. So I've got that in my mind, and then I've also got in my mind the fact that I've had a couple of situations recently where I feel I really didn't choose, and I did get knocked off a lot, and I found my way back to steady, and it took me longer than I have for a long time, but I got there, so it was okay. And I'm like in this place of, I'm almost like going back to it to ask the question about how, I'm curious about how that happens. When I felt quite steady before the things happened, but then I'm thinking, well, obviously I wasn't that steady, otherwise I wouldn't have been so knocked off. But then I'm also thinking, is it actually helpful for me to be looking back at why I got knocked off? Would I be better off just focusing forward and saying, well, I'm steady now, so...
We would start with you in a place of understanding that celebration about you opening any door. In other words, you said, I've had some wins in the sense of I was steady and I was the one opening the door and I was not thrown off. In other words, once you start realizing that, that is a big step. That is a huge step. There is such a huge step for you to start really deliberately, on purpose, using the other side, directing the other side of your creation process, and where that might have not been the case. In other words, imagine that someone is...
No, I didn't explain myself properly. It was the opposite. I felt like I hadn't opened the door. I felt like it kind of smacked me in the face.
We understand that you got smacked in the face, but we also know there was at least one time or two times or three times when you were so steady opening the door to look for trouble. In other words, that happened at some point. We're not talking about this particular situation. We're talking about any situation. And therefore we would celebrate that. We would celebrate and remember those things from the place of steady, saying, I'm so steady right now. I'm feeling so great. I'm feeling so grateful. I'm feeling so appreciative that there were the times, or there are more and more times, when I'm the one opening the door. When there is not somebody knocking at my door, not even knocking at my door, but opening my door and me being startled by how dare they to open the door and therefore provoke these questions within me. But me being the one opening the door, and sometimes there is trouble, and sometimes, guess what? There is no trouble. Sometimes because when you open the door, there is no trouble. There is only a calmness, there is only ease, there is only soft way of curiosity that brings you the question. And sometimes you will open the door and here comes the trouble. And sometimes the doors will be open without you even trying to open the door. And so you celebrating that each of those options that we just talked about, each of those ways, there's infinite of them, we just mentioned a couple, are really beneficial and valuable to you. And understanding that you might still predominantly be knocked off because you're not the one opening the door, but celebrating that you started opening the door. And if you started opening the door, that means that you started recognizing you're steady. You started recognizing that whatever tools get you to steady, you can be then the one opening the door. And it's okay if you don't open it at all times. You will not want to open it at all times. Do not mistake us by saying that you are going to be the one opening the door at all times. But when you start opening the door on your own for that trouble enough times, it will not matter to you eventually who is the one opening the doors. It will be sometimes you and someone else, but you will not be, in other words, the door will be open. There will not be knocked down by surprise. And if in those occasions when you are knocked down by surprise, in other words, when the question shows up so rather quickly, you'll be so predominantly in place of you being the one to open the door, and then sometimes see and sometimes not to see trouble come through, in other words, formulating of a new question, that it will be such a minor thing to you. In other words, things will start shifting, but you have to celebrate that you started opening the doors. You have to celebrate that you are the one who've done it several times. And as we said to a friend before, if you can get from the place of question to the place of steady, regardless of how often you get, you will then be able to open the door more and more and more times. And we're not saying you're going to do it 100% of time. We can assure you you will not do it 100% of time. We can assure you that you did not want to be the one opening the doors for quite so many times. In other words, every single time. Because the moment you can open the door on your own next trouble, or for you to look for a curiosity every single time, is the time to change the vantage point, transition into the new physical iteration. And for as long as you're curious, and there is so much curiosity in you, you will get there quite often, and you will want to be surprised and delighted by that pebble in the shoe that sometimes shows up uninvited and sometimes by you opening the door.
Thank you so much.
These are some really, really quick-moving, brilliant resonances that you're finding today. We're really, really excited for more to come. We'll make a very brief segment of break and then continue in several minutes in appreciation of all of these brilliant questions for now and so many more to come in a brief minute for now. That's it. We're here now, excited to continue with your brilliant questions. Go ahead.
Hi, again. I really like to think about this, and I want to chew on this with you. I love finding those feelings in my day where I'm just so satisfied, and I'm happy, and I know that I'm in alignment with myself. I'm in alignment with Source, and what I do is I isolate that feeling. It's like I put it in a little bottle and I tuck it in my pocket, and then I can like flow that out into other areas of my life. And I kind of just want, like I learned that through Abraham Hicks' teaching, how to isolate a good feeling thought and milk it. Milk it until you cannot even milk it anymore, because everything that's good about it you want in your experience. So I kind of just wanted you to find my question around this, because I don't even know what the question is, but just for your input on the powerfulness, the importance, and the value of us finding these moments of joy and feeling good, and we isolate them so that we can then spread that into other areas of our life. So that's kind of just what I just want your takeaway on that.
What you're talking about is you have the tool. Some tool gets you to the place of ease and steady and love and appreciation, and you feel great. This positive emotion feels good. Feels so good to you that you want to bottle it up and you want to apply it to the other ones. But what we're saying is that's still on a part of getting to steady. In other words, that milking is in a part of getting to steady. When you get so steady and get the clarity of answer of any kind flow through you, it's time for you to start applying that by opening the door into the next thing. And there is really nothing to bottle up. There is really even nothing to milk from that point on. You can only milk it by getting to the place of steady. But once you feel the place of steady, it's time for you to apply the steady into everything else that's coming through. In other words, you trying to milk sometimes, milking being stretching it longer, lasting you longer, sometimes can put you in a place of holding on to it. In other words, you can have that feeling and you can have desire to stretch it and to milk it longer only if you feel like you're not getting there as often as you want to, or that you do not have access to get to there as long as you want to. But once you do get to that, you feel it. You feel steadiness within that. There is no necessity for you to bottle it up, because you're immediately from that place easy and steady, you start bringing it and applying it on the way to open the door to see what's the trouble. In other words, that there is no necessity for you to try to hover there for so long, because you can get there in next moment and in the next moment and in the next moment and in the next moment. In other words, there is nothing for you to hold on and to stretch, because that never really ever happens that way anyway. You get to that place of steady, you get to that place of predominant steady and love and appreciation, and that might feel to you like you're milking it, but you're consistently moving through. Now, you sometimes are so in that place that you want to stay there and you feel like you want to bottle it up, but the process of bottling it up is the process of holding on to it for the days or for the moments where you do not have it. And there is no necessity for that, because in the moments when you feel like there is any kind of a new wobble coming through, you are never really applying that which you've bottled, because you get, by using your tools, to the new layer of ease and love and steady and appreciation that has nothing to do with what you've bottled. What you've bottled is old news. What you've bottled is an old news love that has really expired already, because there is so much more coming through to you. And even if you could use that bottled love from before, it is really insignificant in comparison to the new that's waiting for you in the new discovery, that therefore you are then excited for the discovery of more. In other words, you want to have more of those discoveries and not try to bottle up, because as we said to the friend before, there is not this finite, consistent, never changing. It is infinite, consistent, and always changing love and appreciation and satisfaction, and therefore nothing to bottle up, because you cannot bottle up something that's consistently moving. You can experience it and then apply it, and experience it and sometimes not apply it, and experience it, but what you're experiencing is always new, always fresh. There is always fresh source of love that you're tapping in and always having access to it. Always having access to the new layers and the new layers and the new layers and the new layers. It is not this finite fountain where it's so consistent and steady. The steadiness of part of it is consistent, so much so. But the amounts of it, in other words, the layers of it are so infinite, consistently changing, that's why you cannot have enough.
That is absolutely perfectly in point. Oh my God, so good. Okay, so last question is, I was meditating 2 to 3 days ago. I meditate every day, so sometimes I kind of lose track of what day it was, but that doesn't matter. But I was meditating really deeply, and I really got into a really good, solid place. And I heard a message come through, and I wanted to ask you about it, because I feel like there's a lot of value in it, not only for me, but like for a lot of people in the world, and just like, I don't know, all of us as humans, we're just trying to figure out this life. We're trying to figure out what we're here to do, and we want to interact with others and have the best interactions that we can have.
So what's the message?
So the statement that came through in my mind said, expectations are actually just resentment in the making. So expectations are actually just resentment in the making, which to me sounded like, hey, when you put an expectation on somebody else on how they're supposed to react or act, or any situation that you're walking into, you feel like you think you know how this should go. Well, that doesn't always add up. That doesn't always transpose. That doesn't always manifest exactly as we, in our minds, think about it. And so if we have all these expectations upon the world and upon our loved ones and our community and our media and our world, it's almost like we're setting ourselves up for resentment, because as soon as they disappoint us because they can't meet what we have expected of them, now we are in a resentment mode. So I really believe that you have something really beautiful to share about this, because it's not a trap that anyone should ever be confined or stuck in. It's not a problem. It's almost like an awareness or like a realization that we need to have around, we might be setting up false expectations around people that we love and adore, but we don't even need to do it.
It's way simpler than you're presenting it to be. We understand what you received, and you receive one aspect of it. Expectation can build resentment, but expectation can also build satisfaction. It can also be a gateway to love. It can be also a gateway to so many beautiful discoveries. In other words, sometimes the expectation, you're talking about one side of it. That expectation for mirror reflection through others coming back through you is sometimes is the question and sometimes is the answer. That's all there is. So you can say, instead of going into that strong emotion of resentment, you can also say that expectation can be valuable to me as a question, and expectation can be valuable to me as an answer. For sometimes when I expect, the mirror reflection is satisfying, and there is that positive expectation. And sometimes where I have an expectation, mirror reflection is negative, which means that I got to ask another question. All of it equally valuable to me. And therefore, expectations in that place are nothing more than a question or the answer based off of where you're at that moment, receiving from that mirror reflection and from that mirror reflection and from that mirror reflection. In other words, there is no absolute way about this, because anything you give attention to, any word that you even use, is always going to be in one of those perspectives, not on one of those destinations, because destination question and destination answer is not really separate destination. It's all the same thing happening at all times, at all times, at all times. And it's sometimes expectation will be my flashlight of attention into a question, and sometimes expectation is my flashlight of attention in an answer. It's as easy as that.
So, I guess the only last part is the clarification around having the expectation. I get that we have curiosity, we have questions, and that's what brings forth the birth of the new growth and the expansion, and it creates more of who we are. But when we actually put the label of expectation,
you can look at expectation as action. You can look at expectation as action. Often friends would say that you want to be in this place of unfocus because the action, you do not want to act all the time. You do not want to act from this place and this place and this place. And while that is true, you do not want to act consistently from a place of question. That does not mean that you do not want to act. In other words, you get to the place of question and then you feel like question is boiling, desire is giving birth. Clarity of question brings from observation and choosing clarity of wanting, and that clarity of wanting allows you to clarify your desire, and now you're tipping the point into the answer, and you get to the place of answer and love and appreciation and satisfaction, and now it's time for you to be the one opening the door for the action and therefore expectation. In other words, when you are coming from the place of steady, expectation is satisfying. When you come from the place of steady, your action is satisfying. In other words, anything that you give your attention to can be satisfying. Your expectation of wonderfulness is predominant within you. And so then you do not need to put expectation in a clump of positive or in a clump of negative, because it's just another way of you seeing that anything you give your attention to really can be wonderful.
So yeah, it's like expectation really isn't what I've been thinking it is. It's actually just a thought or a decision or a curiosity. It's not really a thing. It's actually just one part of that question, of the question-answer dance that we do.
Instead of thinking about expectations serving you only one way or another way, in other words, expectations serving you for something negative, but something negative happens, and that maybe does not sometimes feel like it serves you. You know enough that you know that it serves you, but also positive expectation serves you as well. But both of them are serving you equally. In other words, it's not that you're trying to tip that expectations are only positive. It is not that you're trying to really stay in a negative expectation, but that you do not make that big of a deal because you see the value in both. You see the value in the negative expectation sometimes that catches you to really eventually release it so you can ask the question. And that positive expectation that really allows you to see what you received in a place of unfocused applied into your action for the full thrill of that expectation. You cannot even be physically focused and not have expectations. That would mean like you would be physically focused and not have action and not have focus. To be physically focused without the focus would mean to be physically focused without expectations. So it's there, just not making that big of a deal gets you to the place of more balance where you see the value of all assets that the expectation on its own brings you.
Okay, that's so good. Thank you, Weola. I really feel like I really just kind of shifted very quickly right now and to a new place of understanding how that expectation feels within me. And thank you. I feel really complete. Thank you.
Really, really excellent conversations right here. We love hearing when you feel that sense of resonance, and we started using this word recently, upgrade, because you're consistently upgrading to the new steady, to the new steady, to the new steady, either in these forums and interactions or anything else that you're giving your attention to, and therefore do your question answer dance. Really, really excellent way to create and receive your own creation. We're ready for more. Go ahead.
Hello again. I'd like to ask about, I've had quite a lot of memories coming up recently that seem quite random, but from a certain period of my life that actually wasn't a particularly easy or happy part of my life. And there's two things I'm wondering about it. One is it because I'm getting an opportunity to re-look at those times from a steadier place? Because they're not upsetting me, but I just find it interesting that I'm having these memories come up. And the other part of it is I've read and heard that very often if you're doing a detox diet, which I am at the moment, old memories can come up. And I'm curious, is that true? Can it be diet related, that there's kind of this belief thing that stuff needs to come up and out, and that seems to contradict what I've learned with you, and I'm just curious if you can.
What you're saying is you want to get rid of all these questions that are piling up, that even in a diet you're looking to do it. In other words, your cells are being balanced at all times, and they do not want to be predominantly toxic. In other words, they do not want to be predominantly in a place of question, but they do still have questions at all times. And so if you're trying to get rid of something, oftentimes you would try to get rid of these things which is predominantly. When you look into getting rid of anything, you do not want to look into it into an absolute way. In other words, you want to have through your body that place of cleansing. In other words, balance towards predominant ease. Balance towards predominant satisfaction. Balance towards predominant love. Balance towards predominant place of ease. In other words, you're not looking to really make everything so easy that you're ready to re-emerge into the new perspective. In other words, and when you get to do that, it is the same thing with all of the thoughts that are coming through as well. If you're in a place of getting rid of things that you want to get rid of will start popping up. But if you're in a place of balancing everything and seeing it from a different perspective, now that's a completely different stance. If you're looking that anything that you do in your physical diet is there, not as a temporary opening of the pipeline to get rid of too much extra negative stuff that you might need, but it's a natural part of the process for regaining more balance, that you will see that you can do that consistently. That everything in your everyday diet is part of that, where you allow your body to have that process of not only digesting and giving you the fuel, but also reconfiguring itself, or really re-energizing and regenerating itself on a cellular level, where you do not have to do predominantly just digestion energy, and then the period of time where you're allowing it, now it's time for you, body and my beautiful cells, to create this place of cellular regeneration, or what you call cleansing, but I will incorporate it into my everyday balanced experience. There is so much ease in that, knowing that therefore you will have so much ease and satisfaction, not trying to hold out from those negative thoughts, but allowing that if they come through, they will come through from the place of steady, you opening the door and you seeing them in a completely different light, like something that it does not really matter so much. That is when you really, as you mentioned, can rewrite it, but there is really not much value into rewriting any of that because it happened. It continues evolving based off of your steady. Once you keep your steady, all of those stories, all of those memories are getting shifted as well. And as they continue to evolve, they continue to evolve as your cells in the body. Therefore, your thoughts as well continue to evolve and move infinitely in the direction of your steadiness. So you're steady first and then applying it to anything you have time for.
And it's interesting because it feels like that's already happening in that, as I say, like memories from unhappy time, but I don't feel unhappy when I'm thinking them. I'm just like, oh, that's weird.
Because now, from this perspective of steady, you can see the value for it. You can see the role it played into you to get to this place of steady. And then sometimes you might be in this place of natural or maybe neutral stance about them because they used to throw you off, but now they're not throwing you off. And then you will get to the point, seems pretty soon, from the place of steady that you speak, that you will start celebrating those experiences. Celebrating those things, those pebbles in the shoe, seeing them from the place of so much value that they brought to your life, that you will not be able not to see them from that predominantly steady place of actual celebration.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Really, really, really brilliant conversations today. There is a lot of speed at your excellent questions, and we're eager to hear more. Go ahead.
So, not sure where the question is in here. I just kind of want to discuss patterns that we've developed and your perspective on subconscious things that are going on, how much that is a player in our life. I just noticed a thing the other day, actually I think it was yesterday, in regard to an attraction to someone I was interested in as a potential partner, and found out some new things about him that were not so positive, and they felt like things that I've experienced before, and I thought I was past that kind of moving forward and trying to attract someone a little better suited to what I'm looking for, if that makes sense. And then, is it like, are there subconscious things going on? I know Abraham talked about the subconscious is on a player in your, and you don't have emotions around it, it's on a player in your life. So I'm just wondering how much there's like patterns going on or subconscious, or how to move through that. Yeah.
We'll start in a place of you trying to attract something. In other words, that is inevitably happening based off of where you're at. So you trying to attract or not to attract, we do not use that word as much. We're lighter about those words between your question and answer dance, because that even which you call your subconscious can serve you very well. That which you call is your subconscious or unconscious serves you so well with so many patterns. So it's not all that bad. It is not all that does not serve you. It serves you to survive. It serves you to breathe. It serves you to know when to go to eat. It serves you in so many different ways. But we agree that there are patterns that you might want to change, and that you want to be so steady when you shine the light on those patterns. In other words, you can try to ignore some of those patterns and they will continue coming through. And some of them continue coming through and they serve you. They're on that autopilot because of that steady. And then some of them are on an autopilot that it's not so steady and that it come through. So we're not saying do not look at them at all, but we're also not saying for you to look at them at any given time. You want to be in that place of steady before you come through. And so what coming through means is you find through the place of ease and satisfaction. To get to the place of ease and satisfaction by any tool that you have. Is it appreciation, meditation, physical activity, whatever it is to get you to that place. And that from that place of steady, you say, I know how it feels to be steady. I know how it feels to be satisfied. I know how it feels to be loved. And therefore, from this place, I know that there is infinite matches who can get to interact with me. But I also know that I get to this place of steady, so much so. I get to this place of steady, so much so because I get to that place from within. And I understand that anyone I give my attention to from this place of steady will get me to be in a place either of softer curiosity, or maybe even more potent question asking, or sometimes even discomfort. But I understand that that mirror reflection of that which is the partner will consistently give me an opportunity to see where I'm at. And I'm not looking for this partner to be that perfect mirror reflection of what I have within, because that would mean that this person I'm giving so much attention to is reflecting back to me only my place of unfocused. And if I know that if that was to be the case, if my partner and then my relatives and then my friends and then everything else I give attention to was to give me this perfect reflection of everything that exists, of my wider perspective, of my non-physical part of me, I would lose an interest at this moment and I would be ready to re-emerge to the next particular place. In other words, for the next particular vantage point. And for I know that for as long as I have curiosity for milking this physical experience for more of those questions to bring me more discoveries of those reconfigured love and appreciation and satisfaction and bliss, I understand that this person, these people, and especially the person that I'm giving the most attention to, such as partner, will be someone who will provide me with the perfect mix of variety, so I can then sometimes get some reflection back that is the pebble in the shoe, and that even maybe activate some of the old patterns, and then sometimes really to be reflection of me already rewrote my pattern. In other words, I want someone who is going to not only point out what I've already adjusted within me in my perspective, but I want this person to point out where else can I go to adjust it, because I can continuously, as I continue moving and changing those patterns of thoughts and ease, I can then apply my steady to more and more and more, and I can find that it's not about me changing the pattern and having the benefit of the pattern being changed, but the process of changing the pattern is the most satisfying part of the experience. And therefore I want partner that is going to mix it up for me, because I want to have reflections continuously point me not only in a place of where I need to adjust and what I want to adjust and what are the desires being born. I want my partner to allow me to birth desire from those experiences, but also reflect back to me all of these desires that I have received in my physical experience. That is really what I understand is the most satisfying experience in dancing with someone in this physical plane.
So if I'm hearing you right, it's more about sort of fine-tuning that desire and getting clearer about it, because there's going to be experiences that are like the pebble in the shoe, or noticing possible patterns that aren't serving me so that I can get clearer.
Imagine that you have a partner that reflects back to you only love and ease and satisfaction and tranquility and bliss. Imagine that this person, even if they could be that perfect reflection to you, you would lose interest in asking questions. In other words, you will go for someone else who will give you some questions too. So what we're trying to say is, do not look to try to attract only that part which is the mirror reflection of satisfaction and love and ease and appreciation, but someone who will allow you to apply that feeling that you have within you into any question that comes by interacting with them. Really, really satisfying conversations today. Go ahead.
Hello. Hi, Weola. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Hi. Hi. I have a question really. It's about the term lying, or the term, I guess, people's version of their truth. And I just wanted to get clarity around this using me as an example. So, within the last month, I've had 2 conversations with strangers, like people who I've just sort of bumped into because I was at the dog park or walking my dog down the road or whatever. And the first time I bumped into this lady and she was asking me if I had been vaccinated. For me personally, I just tend to check into my body, and it's a clear no that out of all the options available to me, the vaccine doesn't resonate with me. So it's not something that I'm lining up for. So anyway, this lady, it just happened, it was kind of a spontaneous chit chat, and it was like, oh yeah, so you've been vaccinated. And what came out of my mouth at that point was, yes. That's all I said, yes. And then in my mind, I was like, I've been vaccinated with love. But then equally, like a couple of weeks later, I was having the same thing. Like I was in the dog park, and this other lady came up, and same conversation came up. Same thing came up. She said, "Have you been vaccinated?" And I straight away just went to, no, I haven't. My body doesn't. I checked in with my body, and it's not for me. And in both cases, my perception was that in one instance I was saying yes, and in one instance I was saying no. But in both instances, I felt aligned with the answer that I gave. And so I was discussing this with a friend and even with my mind. And I was kind of wondering, because my question really is like, can you talk about lying? And was I lying? Because in both instances, I felt good about what I said. But I just wanted to get clarity about that, because I guess really I'm saying, how some people lie because they're maybe scared of judgment, or how somebody's going to perceive them or receive them, or like because they care about what somebody else thinks. And it wasn't coming from that place. It was just, so the first time, the instance where I said, yes, and I haven't been vaccinated with the COVID vaccine, and I knew what she meant, but it just felt right to say that. Is there something for me there to look at, although I felt good saying that? And so I'm thinking maybe there's a big picture, maybe there was a reason why I said that. But it wasn't because I was I cared about what that person thought. It was just that's what came out of me. But maybe I'm missing something. And could you please clarify?
Well, everyone that gives you reflection back is you. In other words, this person reflecting back to you and this person reflecting back to you. Those questions coming in from these people is you asking those questions. And then you finding the resonance with what is it exactly that you want to say. So you saying that stuff to another person. In other words, you were at a certain distance. It did not really matter what happens. In other words, it did not really matter what this person was thinking about. It was not conversation about that. It was a curious conversation, light, curious conversation about something like this that came as a reflection back to you. And so if this was really nitty-gritty conversation of somebody looking to find this out because of this and this and this and this reason, Kosta has a lot of back home in Serbia family members that are doing the vaccination, and they do not want to be surrounded by other people who did not have it for various reasons. And well, that's a completely different conversation. In other words, in that case, you would probably not go and say that you were not physically vaccinated about something if this interaction was like that. But if you're receiving as a feedback from these people to see your resonance with that, then there is really nothing wrong with you making the words come out whichever way they're coming out. In other words, it is all at all times your reflection, and based off of what you're seeing and how you're seeing it and how you're resonating with that at that particular moment is for you to see how you want to act in the next way and in the next way and in the next way. And therefore, this what you call white lie or an actual lie, is this ethical? Is it not ethical? In other words, we said to a friend before, you cannot be in anybody's head even if you wanted to. You cannot see how they're going to react to the things that you're saying and how you're saying it. But you can see very much from your place of steady, or sometimes not steady, how you react to what comes back as a mirror reflection back to you, and you can sometimes generate a question from it, or you can be in such a place of ease and satisfaction that this reflection really matches exactly that.
Yeah, so that was kind of what I guess just to be be clear. I think I know what you're saying, but I just want to make sure I am receiving this in a productive way. In my mind, I felt energetically, emotionally, that steady in both cases. And so really, I guess my question was, can you be in alignment? Can you be steady and be like, white lie, the term lying, I'm just going to use that because that's what people use, but can you be lying and be aligned and steady? Or
in other words, can you have immunity to whatever virus it is without having vaccine, so you can be so convinced to say that you have immunity on the vaccine? In other words, yes, you can have that and find that resonance, and then find exactly what words will be in a comfort at that moment for the other person to have. Kosta and Arman have gotten through the place of being exposed and experiencing this virus with mild symptoms, and when anyone asks them right now if they're vaccinated, they say that they do have antibodies based off of them being experienced it. Their body has produced them, and while they do not know for how long, because there is not sufficient study yet about that, that is as far as they go about it. And therefore, you want to find this resonance, and you want to find and see the resonance of what's coming through with you, because if you were to feel like anyone will be in danger based off of your comment, you would not say it like that.
Right. Yeah, because I truly believe it's all vibrational. So in my mind, I'm not, I don't live in fear about it. I'm completely, me as a person, it's I'm vibrationally, I don't, it's not even something I entertain my consciousness, and I've been fine. So I guess whatever comes out of me, I have to trust that that's my higher self coming out of me in each situation, and it knows. As long as I feel good in the moment and it's not me, my energy is steady, then so what you're saying is, as long as I check in on that, then yes.
Let's talk about this place which you say your higher self coming through. In other words, this is not your higher self coming through. This is your blended self. Have seen all of the perspectives offering the experience. It is never that you talk from place of self only or from the place of wider perspective only. It's always a blend of what is predominantly within you. And so it is not that you got yourself to this place and now from this place everyone understands, even though it is not accurate to what this person might have thought. It's about you being in that place of blendedness after seeing things from various perspectives, from a perspective of self, of technical aspects of it, and perspective of that which is wider. You call it higher self, we call it wider perspective, and from that making really to see what is that integrated stance from both of the perspectives.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that fine tuning. It is blended, and that is what I meant. But thank you for reflecting that back to me. And in that case, just moving on from that, I guess because I was discussing this with a friend, and we were just kind of bouncing off, ideas off one another, and even with Armand, I was discussing it. Because then the subject of manipulation came up, and it was like, well, that white light that I told, well, would it have been a form of manipulation?
It would if this conversation, for this example you gave, was to continue and said, if this person was to say, well, that's excellent, now I can come and hug you, and then you would change your stance because you would not want this person to make a decision based off of what you said. In other words, you will find exactly everything, and you do not have to take the stance even in the choice of words that you made in that particular moment. You can clarify yourself as you go based on what you have going on. In other words, it's never a stance that it's even longer than a moment. It appears to you, but if it feels like it's longer than a moment, that means that you continue making the same choices now and now and now and now and now and now.
Got ya. Yeah, because it was a moment thing, and it wasn't like they were coming to hug me. Yeah, I see what you mean. That maybe would have been a different... that would have been something different. I see. Okay. And that would have probably been manipulation, right?
You would not be able to manipulate this, because in that particular moment, that which you call manipulation, that which you call manipulation in that stance of you doing something that someone is not ready to do, in other words, making decision or choice for someone else, could not have happened in this situation, because from that wider perspective, your stance would not allow you to continue with that which was white lie, because it would turn into a full-on lie that you would not be comfortable with.
Got ya. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for that. That's really clear. Thank you so much, Weola. That's it for me. Thank you.
These are the really fine nuances that we're talking about with variety of perspectives. What comes in as an explanation for you for that particular moment, for that particular situation. And sometimes the situation takes different turns moment by moment, and therefore your choices and your receiving of exactly what to say can change moment by moment by moment. In other words, you could have met this particular lady at that moment and leave it at that, and next time she would remember that you're vaccinated, as you said, and wanted to come and hug you, and you would change it because you would want to give her enough information about that. But also that conversation could have happened moment after moment. In other words, the time in between is really irrelevant because it's all happening moment after moment after moment after moment after moment.
Got ya. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, brilliant, masterful conversations.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question, and this question is about family. And my mom was here visiting recently, and I've been in a really good vibrational state, feeling very high vibration and in alignment. But when I'm around her, I notice that I get out of alignment, and I feel like my vibration is lower around her, and I feel like these old emotions are triggered and come back up when I'm around her. So what is your suggestion how to deal with that and to stay in alignment?
What we want to bring to your attention to is to start seeing the value of that which you call not is alignment. Because if you're trying to hold on to that which you call high vibration or feeling positive, the moment you start holding to it, there is no experience of the flow and the movement, which is the most natural about this. In other words, your family, your mother being one of your best teachers, those close, tight-knit relationships, the best teachers of you, as you say, finding your steady and then applying it into that which causes you to ask the questions. Your mother will continue to cause you to ask questions as much as you are continuing to have her or cause within her to ask questions. And that is the most natural stance about people that care about each other and therefore give to each other quite a lot of attention. When you switch your attention from this thing to 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 this thing, then it is so easy for you to see that everything starts blending in. But we also understand that it's sometimes tough for you to see your mother in the same way or with the same intensity as someone who is a stranger or somebody that you're walking the dog with in a park that does not really matter to you as much. We understand that there is history, we understand that there's habit of thoughts and patterns, we understand all of that. So it would start in a place of knowing that you are not in the physical experience to hold on to that which you call alignment and never let it go, that you feel like you're failing if that happens, because it's inevitable you're going to ask the questions. And once you understand that it's inevitable, then you are the one ready to open the door. We understand this might be a stretch for you at this moment, but we also think you're ready to hear it. You are the one opening the door. You can be the one opening the door for misalignment, as much as you are the one opening the door to get to the alignment. Or misalignment can find you, like when your mother visits. So next time when your mother is about to visit, you can get to the place of steady. You can recognize that you're feeling good, steady. You call it high. We like to call it steady because calling it of high and low, you sometimes feel you want to hold on to high and not get to low. And because you don't want to get to low, you're holding on. And the holding on gets you to experience the low. And we want you to feel easy and steady about anything that comes through, so you can see that movement is what you really are looking to master. That movement and you choosing how long you stay in each of those. Because it's not a question if you're going to be out of that alignment or if your mother is going to get you to cause you to ask questions. It is the question how long you're going to stay there based off of your own steadiness. So here it is. You're feeling great. You're feeling steady. And you say, I love how I'm operating right now. I love that everyone in my environment right now keeps me, that my attention to what I'm giving attention to right now keeps me in a place of predominantly satisfaction. I really feel aligned with satisfaction most of the time. And I understand that sometimes throughout the day, there will be the people in the office or at the market or talking to friends or in any kind of interactions that throws me off of that. And I feel like I'm so predominantly in this place of high that I don't even notice that. But I also know that my mom sometimes can do this. And I know that so far, every time she would come to visit, or predominantly when she would come to visit, there will always be adjustment time. In other words, it almost sounds like that we agreed for her to come on Friday, but she comes on Thursday and opens the door and I get startled. That's how it feels. It feels to me that some of these thought patterns come through because I feel that I'm not super ready. But now I feel steady and I can be ready. And I'll be ready for me to be the one to open the door on that Thursday too. I will start opening the door for my mother, not even on Thursday, but on Wednesday. And maybe on Tuesday. In other words, I will be inviting my mom's presence, and I will be satisfied for the questions that will be generated. And in that knowing that I'm the one opening the door for this interaction to happen, and for me to open the door for these conversations, and me for to open the door for this pebble in the shoe, and for these brilliant questions and desires that are going to be activated within me because of my mother, I know that I will be able to see new heights, new highs, and new layers and levels of that which I call alignment. And so I will be the one opening the door. Because if I open the door, if I'm the one opening the door, more than half of my resistance falls through. More than half of me feeling misaligned or low vibrating falls through because I'm the one inviting it. If I'm the one inviting a little bit of trouble that my mother is, this wonderful being that carried me in her body for me to become this what I am, to have this physical iteration, being one of the most important components, collaborative components for me to experience this life. I know that I will not be able to appreciate everything, but I'll be able to appreciate more of it. But I'll appreciate mostly my steadiness to be the one to open the door for this trouble that my mother represents on my own, and not allowing her to be the one bulldozing through my door to invite this trouble. And when I do that, I know I will be in the stance of not eliminating that which is low vibration or that which is question, because that is really not the point. But it will not feel to me that it's throwing me off. It will feel more like curiosity turning into question, turning into place of generating the clarity of the question and births desire, and then allowing me with that clarity of wanting to see that desire come through fruition in my physical experience, either while she's even around there or at some other time. We would go about it this way, where you would really have these conversations from the place of steady. You cannot have these conversations once your mother is already there, open the door on Thursday even though you were expecting her on Friday. In other words, you cannot get there when you get startled by the question. But when you know, and when you can expect, as we talk to the friend, that predominantly question is being reflected back to you and throws you off from that steady balance, you can then anticipate it and be prepared. Be prepared in knowing that if you open the door, you are ahead. If you open the door for these questions to come through, you are ahead. And if you are ahead, there is way better chance, there is way better stance for you to have your wider perspective present and applied to all of the interactions with your mother than if you do not do that.
And it seems like, too, that it's only a problem if I'm judging it that way. If I can be more in the inquiry and unattached, like you said, and just observe it and have it bring more questions, like, oh, well, that's interesting, that emotion that it's bringing up.
In understanding that those emotions that are brought up are your beginning stances of rewriting them in a new way. Because imagine a situation where your mother is reflecting back to you only positive love and emotion and satisfaction. In other words, she would not be a significant player anymore. In other words, she would not be a significant player for you for some of those thought patterns that are coming through, not only when she is around, but they're coming through in other stances too, for you to look into them. And you can look into them from the place of question, that you meet your mother by being startled, or you can meet them from the place of steady and applying steady into that conversation. Now that is a completely different experience for you to have.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Brilliant. Brilliant conversations today. We'll take another few questions if there are some. Go ahead.
Susan, go ahead.
So I know that as humans, we are a whole slew of different emotions that come up, and I do a pretty good job of staying steady and being in a good feeling place most of the time. Sometimes, though, I find that certain things, like sometimes I'll see something or hear something, and it sort of triggers a sadness or maybe like a missing out. Maybe it's just FOMO, fear of missing out kind of thing happening for me. And it usually catches me off guard. And sometimes it's every once in a while I'll watch some kind of movie or, it's usually what triggers it. And I may be trying to analyze it too much, but I'm just really not understanding. Of course, things they never come out of the blue. Of course, I get that. But I try to sort of, I don't want to say learn from it, but sort of reflect on it and what does it mean for me. And I guess there's not really a question there.
There is so many questions here for you that you're generating. All of these questions being you are looking how and why this comes through from the blue. In other words, understanding that even though it's not that, it still shows up from the blue, but also you're looking to how do I really learn from it and not repeat it? How do I not repeat the sad emotion? How do I not repeat fear of missing out emotion? How do I not observe variety? And we say you cannot be in physicality to do that. In other words, you're looking to find those nuances and varieties. But the reason why sometimes it feels like it defines you because you identify yourself with that emotion for too long of a time. In other words, what we try to say, and we've been saying for quite some time, and there will be at some point, there is many of books that will come through this format. Armando and Kosta have plenty of things that they want to really showcase and gift, but one of them coming through is really called living beyond the emotions. And that's understanding that those temporary moments that you're experiencing, you're not looking to eliminate them. You're looking for you to eliminate your longer term identification with them. That's all it is. Because once you understand that you're not really physically focused and only your body, and you're not only your mind, and you're not only your emotions, and you're not only even the physical energies that you have, but all of those are your tools. All of those are your tools for your life force to flow through, to be experienced. Then you understand that that's a temporary moment. There is a temporary identity. That emotion is a temporary identity. And once you see it as a temporary identity, once you choose how long you stay there, in other words, you open yourself up for a sad movie and causes within you something, causes maybe even a thought of something or someone you knew, causes some kind of feeling of inadequacy or not such a comfortable feeling, you know when is the time, if it's too much, to even stop the movie. Or maybe you're steady enough, you will follow through with that movie and it will not hold your attention for longer to after you finish that. In other words, that experience of any kind of negative emotion does not last for longer than you choose at that moment because you're not identified with that emotion. Because you are not your emotions. We want to bring to your attention is that your emotions are the tools, and you can experience more of those wonderful ones only once you understand that you are not the emotion, but that you're consistently moving through them and that they're the tools for you and for your life expression to feel more satisfying and more wonderful to you. Once you get to use the tools to get you to the place of steady, and especially when you start applying your steady into everything else that you're giving attention to while you're generating new questions, then you get to the place of so steady that you applied your steady into everything, that you just are. You just are present. You're just in the place of being. And once you're in that place of being, then you cannot be your emotion. Then you cannot really be experiencing anything but wonderful, knowing that in that place, you are the one applying your steadiness to anything that comes through, and therefore choosing how long this particular emotion comes through you and what value it brings to you at this moment and in this moment and in this moment. And then nothing really throws you off, because you see value rather quickly even in those negative emotions.
They do come and go very quickly, you know. So.
And so your desire to speed that process up will never result in you not having it and experiencing it, which means you're in such a lovely place to be. You're in such a steady place to be that you can experience it, take the value for it, launch a desire, bring yourself towards the tipping point, towards the answer. In other words, move towards, by any tool you have, to get you to the place of steady. There is really nothing fuller in your physicality that can be experienced than that soft, subtle nuance about how long you stay in experiencing each emotion. That is really masterful creating.
Thank you.
We are good for today. Thank you.
In appreciation of all of your steady moments coming through to ask the questions that are really so potent sometimes, and sometimes it takes you a moment to discover them. Using this forum, this broadcasting format, not only to come with a resonant question that's boiling within you, which sometimes is the case, but allowing yourself to discover and go into those areas and those nuances that usually you might feel it's digging too much, or that you might feel you don't feel steady as much to ask them. We love hearing the becoming of your questions as much as we love you receiving this energy exchange to receive the answers that are birthed from those questions. In appreciation of your brilliant question-answer dance, moving through and expanding through this format for now. That's it. Ooh.